Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today will be Seabass of WNWS of Jackson, Tennessee. We will talk Vanderbilt football. This podcast was originally done on Wednesday afternoon. We will air it on Thursday afternoon. Our sponsor, WellSpire, is our presenting sponsor for this show. It offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We also thank our co-presenting sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Today's news presented by Sutherland & Belk, a Nashville-based injury law firm. Sutherland & Belk is committed to fighting for those who have been injured in car, motorcycle, and truck accidents. Check them out at sbinjurylaw.com. Vanderbilt heads to Richmond for a men's basketball game on Thursday night. That game will be on ESPN+. That is a premium streaming service. It is not part of the SEC network, so you will have to pay to watch that one online. Game will start at 6 Central. Our guest line, presented by our friends at Boll & Branch, started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I've slept on their sheets for years. They're amazing. Had no clue how comfortable sheets could be until I got them. They are fair trade certified, meaning they are made under safe conditions by men and women, treated and paid fairly. Try them free for a month. You can return them for free, but you will not want to. Once you have the sheets, try the mattress. That was voted the best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That is spelled B-O-L-L. Enter the promo code Vandy and get $50 off your first set of sheets. Seabass joins us now, straight from the physical therapist office, right into a riveting conversation with my 5-year-old son, and now to the podcast. How are you, sir?
Man, it's just another lovely day, man. It's hard out here for a pimp, Chris. You ought to know that.
Hey, if I know anything, it's that, right?
Absolutely, man. I'll tell you one thing, man. It's so much different than when I was doing physical therapy, like back in college and stuff like that, compared to now. You know what I feel like, Chris? I feel like a 9-year-old racehorse who's still trying to make it, who's still trying to do it after all these years, but it requires so much more to keep things going, man. Falling apart, Chris, 46 and holding, baby.
It only gets worse.
47, never mind. Wait a minute. How old am I? 47, that's right.
wait. This podcast is off to a great start. We don't even know how old we are, so.
Chris, the one thing that I can tell you is that you and I are getting together doing this podcast, it's going to work out.
It's been a disorienting kind of season.
A little bit, yeah. a little bit. See, it's easy for me because no Vanderbilt fans call my show. I don't ever have to talk about it. I'd like to, but not really at this point because I get my fill of that with you guys. But you have to do this every day. It's called hazard pay right here, Jack.
Well, let me be completely honest, okay?
Okay.
Whatever issues I have in this profession are first world problems, okay? I mean, I'm not out there getting shot at or curing cancer or, those kind of things. I have no pretense about the challenge or suffering level of my job. At the same time, my goodness, this year has been a doozy. The last 2 years, really. And you have a job to do. There are storylines, whether you've lost 20 in a row or whether you're covering a national title. And you just do what's in front of you. Fans have a right to be negative. And they should be negative. Sometimes it is very appropriate to be negative. And I'm not complaining about my board or fans because I think they're well within the right. But, man, it is just that and covering this. And I'll put it this way. I've got a lot of stuff to do. This morning, I just, screw this. I'm gonna put this aside for about 3 hours and just do something else, just for a change of pace.
Well, I mean, look, there's no doubt that looking for positive and encouraging content about this program right now is a fishing expedition at this point. But you never know. Never know what's around the corner. I haven't totally given up, but I've read a lot of the opinions of a lot of the posters on this. I feel them. I know exactly what they mean. I'm having the same thought. I read one of the posters, and I don't remember the name of who it was. You're all great. And one of them said something to the effect of, man, I've been doing this for, 40, 50 years. I've seen the good. I've seen lots of bad. And it's harder to hang on now than it's ever been. And that's probably true. This program needs some good news, and it needs it soon. I hope it's on the horizon.
Let's just go ahead and go into the mailbag because I think all the topics that we would discuss are there. This mailbag is presented by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. If you need home, auto, motorcycle, renters, landlord, life, or commercial insurance, Josh is the guy to contact. Call him at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at JD Minton HQ. He is my insurance agent. Give him a try. I believe you will be pleased. Josh is a good guy and a big Vanderbilt fan. Help those out who help our show. Vandy Nash says, what words would you use to describe your emotional state as you watch the Florida game?
What words would I use to describe my emotions? Let's see. Betrayed.
Can we use those words on this podcast and keep our clean rating?
Sure. I'll keep them clean as possible. Betrayed, bewildered, befuddled, confused, angry. Basically the same thing as everybody else. I've watched teams that take in the field with far less talent put up far greater an effort. And look, nobody ever wants to lose. I don't want to be anybody's lovable loser, but I can live. I've always been able to live with the understanding because look, if you're going to be a Vanderbilt fan, you have to know what that entails. There's certain things that you're just going to have to accept. And when my team loses because the team they're playing is just so good and they're just so much better. Now you're getting everything I got and I'm going down swinging, but it's simply not enough. I don't like it, but I can live with that all day long. But what I can't live with is just what you saw Saturday. I can't live with that. That's never an acceptable outcome. Florida is clearly a lot better than Vanderbilt, but they're not 56 points better than Vanderbilt, man. There's no sense in getting goose-egged, and I understand we're on our third quarterback. I get all that, but there just seemed to be no game plan, and that's been the case way too many times in the not-too-distant past, and that's the hard pill for me to swallow. Not that we don't have the talent of Florida. I accept that being a Vanderbilt fan. But if that's all I get, this is the type of effort that I get, then what Vanderbilt fan wouldn't be pulling their nostril hairs out by now?
Mr. Vandy says, would like to hear each one of your opinions on why Coach Mason should come back and why he should not come back.
Why I think that Coach Mason should come back, I don't. But if I had to give you a reason, let me see how I can handle this one. All I'll say is I think it's the probability, and Chris, this is right. And I'm probably pretty right about this, and I'm not grasping at straws on this one. I would seriously doubt that and I'm not saying that you do this for the sake of that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it would be one of the good things about having Derek Mason back is I don't think that you can lose Mason and keep Ken Seals. I don't think that's possible. I think that's completely impossible.
My question is, can they keep Mason and Ken Seals at this point?
I think they can, because I know for sure that the Seals family has a very good relationship with Coach Mason and Coach Godowski, and they like them both very much. And hey, look, Ken's a guy that could come in and do a lot for this program right away. And I told you what I think about him as a prospect, but I do not believe that you can lose Mason and keep Seals.
Back to the bigger picture, the problem they have right now is a math problem because now he can't get to 500 or better this year. Next year, I don't see him doing it. I mean, it's the whole Okay, here is the issue that they have, and it's become a math problem. They can't get to 500 or above this year. And I would think, okay, this is 6 for 6. I mean, I would have a hard time thinking that the fan base would be excited about having a coach back for year 8 if year 7 is not a winning season, right? You
Right,
follow?
of course.
So,
Sure.
what are the chances he gets to 7 wins next year?
On paper, very, very low, because on paper this team shouldn't be as talented as its predecessor. Having said that, I think they could be in certain facets, but a very different football team, because remembering there's a couple of grad transfers that could really have helped this defense out. They're not playing right now, that will be playing next year. Maybe they're a little bit more solid on the defensive side of the ball. And by the way, one thing that I do say is a feather in the cap of Coach Mason in this class, or in this the coaching staff, is this particular class, the 20 recruiting class. I love it. I think it's fantastic. I think there's some real help coming that can be early contributors. But across the board, losing the players that we're losing, it's going to be tough to overcome. And it occurs to me as I was saying that, other than Keyshawn Vaughn, is that even really true? I mean, okay, we lose Jared Pinkney, and now that's not a slight at Jared Pinkney. Jared, if you're listening, and understand that's not about you. That's not what I'm talking about. I think you're a potential first-round pick and you're going to have a phenomenal career, but he's completely unused in this offense in every way, so he might as well not even be out there. Same thing for Kalijah Lipscomb. He might as well not even be out there. So, yeah, we won't have him, but do we really have him now?
When a season falls apart like this, it becomes an animal unto itself. You have chemistry issues and things that I just think have really taken winning off the table. And is that the head coach's responsibility? Sure. But let's back up a second, okay? Somebody told me this last year in the middle of the season, and man, if this wasn't the most true statement, I don't know what is. He said to me, I don't think people realize how good their offense is, and I think they will. Let's rewind to last year, okay? They had Kyle Shermer at quarterback, who's now on an NFL roster. They had Keyshawn Vaughn at running back, who is a preseason All-American. They had Jared Pinkney at tight end, preseason All-American, first team by some. They had Kalijah Lipscomb at wide receiver, preseason first team All-SEC. Their left tackle is now, I think, starting in the NFL in Justin School. Right tackle last year, left tackle now, Devin Cochran, I'm guessing, is probably going to play in the NFL. Bruno Reagan was a darn good ball player who's going to get a shot at professional football now. I mean, that's well over half the offense that may play in the NFL.
Well, don't forget about Kari Blasingame, who's now with the Titans.
Right, and he was a backup. So here's my point. You can just kind of throw this year out just because it is what it is. It's a dumpster fire, to be honest. Let's take the dumpster fire out of the equation, discard that one. Go back and look at last year. They had all that talent, and what did they do with it?
And, one could say they got to a bowl game, which would be true, but the end result was another losing season if you're adding the bowl game.
Correct, which I think you should. I mean, that's what they put on the record. So, and Willie Dolnick has a good point. They don't do it like that in the NFL, but still, I mean, that 6 years, you should be able to come up with one of those somewhere.
Yeah, it's still not a win. Even if you do it like the NFL does, it's still not a winning season.
Right. I mean, and the other thing is they could have gone 7-5 before a bowl, and they didn't do that. But I don't mean to pile on. I just look at this and say, okay, if a winning season is something you have to come up with, in 6 years in the books now without that, right? And 7 is what you would probably have to require to be back for year 8. But I think if we're honest, we're both looking at year 7 and saying that's really not realistic at all, having a winning season. So basically what you're doing is you're bringing him back for next year for a goal that nobody really thinks is attainable. So then what's the point?
Sort of along the lines of when you realize you don't have the right person, why do you keep this person? I think the situation here is, and if I'm understanding everything, and I promise you know 1,000 times more than I do, if he's back, it's not because they want him back, it's because they don't have a lot of choice.
I think so. And look, I will also make this point. everything is sort of a product of their history. I mean, you rewind to 1960, you make decisions differently and make an effort this. Maybe they're not in the position to hire Derek Mason in 2014. Maybe they can get a better candidate. Maybe they had a James Franklin somewhere in there that's still here. So the longer that you let problems stick around, the more they add up. That is the lesson of Vanderbilt football the last 60 years. And at some point, I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, Derek has had and let's be fair, Derek has done some good things. Derek has had a rough time getting support. I feel for him with regard to that, but I don't know what more evidence at this point you need to make up your mind on the guy. And if you say, hey, this is not the fit, and we need him to do something that he's not done, that it doesn't look like he can do, then what is the point other than maybe trying to develop players? But then again, you're doing that for the next coaching staff.
Well, I think at this point, the point is saving money.
The point is saving money, but boy, saving money's been the point of the last 60 years. And look, that's not the case with everybody. They had the spell with Franklin, and you have some people like John Ingram and others before him who have done their best, but the system has always won out. It sounds to me like they are privately kind of admitting that. And I know nobody cares because everybody says we've heard this before, and that's where they are with their fan base. He has done well coming off disasters, and maybe they win 7 games next year, but I don't think anybody is convinced of that argument right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, hey, be fine with me. You know, who would have a problem with being wrong when it comes to a situation like that? Not this guy. You know, honestly, I don't think he can do it at this point. And you know me, I'm not like some Mason detractor who's been that way since was bullish about him. You know that. You've heard it.
Oh, and you've been one of his biggest fans.
I can't find anything to hold on to, Chris. I mean, I turned my TV set on, and it's just like I was reading with somebody on the board. I was reading what they were saying, and I had the exact same emotions. I remember when I was reading their post, I thought to myself, when I watched Vanderbilt football today, when I watched that game against Florida, I literally sat there and had the exact same emotions and feelings about what I was watching that this other person that posted on there did. And I was like, you know, I mean, it's like they were walking around the side of my head. How I felt about it, they put it so eloquently, and we're not the only people. And the thing that exacerbates it all is, you know, it would be one thing if we were a fan base of some team in the AAC who's trying to get it done along with everybody else in that conference. But we're in a conference where we're the premier number one show. I mean, there's nothing bigger in college football than SEC football. And it's checkers and chess, not just on the field, the approach to that. And so for the Vanderbilt fan base, we see all these other teams. We see the pageantry of what happens when we go to their place. And look, we don't dare dream quite that big. We understand we're never going to be Auburn, we're never going to be Alabama, but all we're asking for is to just put your best foot forward. And again, I'm not talking to the players. I'm talking about to the football department, the coaching staff, the administrations, the BOT, all of them. And I understand that I'm also talking to people, they're probably not listening, who don't care a thing in the world about sports. And I get that, and that's cool. I don't need you to love sports. That's all right. You can think that sports is the demi-monde of existence. I don't care. But what you have to understand is the Vanderbilt name should resonate excellence or the attempt at it in everything they do. And if it's not enough, if you can't keep up with the Auburns of the world, then you can't keep up. But it can't be for want of trying. And unfortunately, that's what we've got. And I saw another post that said today that this administration is not going to care a thing in the world about having anybody out there next year. And unfortunately, I want you to think about this for a second, Chris. All right, check this out. You're sitting at home, right? You're not Chris Lee. You're Joe Smith. You ready? All right. Ring, ring.
Yes, hello.
Hey, is Mr. Smith in, please?
Speaking.
Hey, Mr. Smith, this is Sexy Pete from the Vanderbilt Athletic Department. We're real excited about our big season next year, and we know that you've been a fan in the past. We would like to see you out there on Saturdays in the fall. We'd like to talk to you about possibly buying season tickets.
Well, Sexy Pete, you certainly have the sexy voice to match, but why should I do that? Because I went last year and it was not a lot of fun.
Oh, but we have a great schedule, man. You're going to get to see some of the best teams in the country playing right here in your backyard. You don't even have to go anywhere. All you got to do is come out. You're going to get a chance to see the Florida Gators in person. You'll get an opportunity to see UT in person. Go get those balls.
That's great. I'll purchase tickets and I'll give them to all my Florida and Tennessee friends.
I've already shot my shot. I have nothing else. What am I gonna say
Sexy Pete, Texas Pete, I don't think anybody's selling me on this.
That's because you don't have anything to sell. You don't have anything to sell. Of course, this was all a little fun here and all that, but I mean, think about being the person that has to make that phone call next year.
Yeah. And this is where the lesson of David Williams, and I know there are complications, but the joke around David for years was that David has retired. He just waited till 2018 to announce it. And that's, maybe I'm being cruel, but I mean, that's the reality of things. Everybody knew David wasn't doing his job, and yet they kept David around, and look what more years that wrought. I mean, I said back in 2016, this is a pointless exercise. He's not doing his job. It's not helping them now. It's just going to cause more problems, and look what happened.
And this kind of ends in the lap of Malcolm Turner. Now, people could say, well, he should have known what he was taking over. I don't think you can truly know until you're all the way involved and then just realizing the totality of the situation. And I'm wondering, because I really like Malcolm Turner, and I'm real interested to see, just how this all plays out. But if you're Malcolm Turner, Chris, if you were Malcolm Turner, what's your course of action here? What are you doing? What's your emphasis right now above everything else in regard to repairing this program?
Okay, we have this car. I've talked about our lemon car, which is doing lemon car things again, by the way. We are trying to hope our air compressor on this sucker doesn't fail, because we've already paid almost as much in repair as we did to buy it. And I'm just going, I would never do anything criminal or shady, but if we're in Kroger someday and somebody happens to sideswipe us and nobody's hurt, I'm not exactly crying a lot of tears over that, if you know what I mean. Maybe there's an analogy for Malcolm Turner in there somewhere, but I just keep thinking about that car, and I'm like, please God, let a sinkhole swallow it up or something like that. I imagine his thoughts have to be something like that.
Look, I'm ready to spin a little something positive. What can I hold on to from a Vanderbilt fan looking forward to the future or hoping for the future? Anyway, well, give me something. Give me a vine. Give me something.
Well, I keep saying this, and nobody believes it. I do think this is true. I mean, and that's kind of where their fans are. They've had it. I really do think they are talking about spending very large sums of money. I think Malcolm Turner has very ambitious goals. I keep hearing that the board is on board. Now, to the degree that they're on board, I guess we will see. But, I mean, everything that I hear behind the scenes is encouraging. Y'all talk to people over there, and it's like even the people that work there and work in Magoogan with Malcolm Turner, they're still like, it's like, man, we've seen this movie so many times. It's like we're having a hard time believing until we see it ourselves.
The only thing I'd say is that I think that, for what I've seen so far, I think Malcolm's a little bit different, though. I believe that he has a progressive way of thinking, and I don't know. I haven't seen all the implementation yet because it's still very, very fresh and early on in the game. But I've got hope, and that's all I guess, a Vanderbilt fan can really cling to right now. The only other thing that I would ask is, has the viewpoint of all this changed? You say that you think he's got some people behind him, the money behind him a little bit. What's changed from their aspect? I mean, because they've been, this athletic department's been met with a cold shoulder in a lot of areas, not named Ingram and a few other areas there. But what has changed? So why is there some momentum in regards to the potential for spending some cash? What has happened?
Well, first of all, let me clarify. It's not the doubts about Malcolm. It's the doubts about, will the board and this university really do this? I think there's more of an awareness of the value that athletics brings to the school. and more of an awareness with the intersection of the city and the conference that they are in and how Vanderbilt can leverage all that to boost its name. Like, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and man, this is just tells you how hard it is to decipher what's really going on at Vanderbilt. And there was even some internal admittance, that James Franklin did wonders for our application numbers and things like that. Like, they could even see it and admit it even after the fact, which, begs the question, why wasn't that more actionable once you know that? But I still think they're going to do big things. I still think there's are going to be some program changing things from everything I hear and see. But all the world right now is like, show me.
Well, can you at least do this? Because I know that you're not going to give details. I'm aware of that. But can you give a time frame in which we can see something tangible?
Well, I think if the strategic plan goes according to the timetable I've heard, then I'm guessing they will tell the public about that sometime in February.
Would make me happy. It's still, look, the implementation of it all is going to take more than a few months, clearly. So, I mean, even if we get great announcements, I don't know how much that has an effect on 2020. But, the one thing that I think is, and we seem to have had this attitude, is that, no, we haven't seen what Derek Mason's like, with what he needs. Well, did we see what James Franklin was like with having what he needs? I know about the indoor facility. I'm quite aware of that. But last time I checked, Derek Mason has it too.
Hey, I've said this over and over. The coach is the single biggest investment you can make in a sport, and I don't think it's close. You get a good coach, that takes care of a lot of problems. You get a bad coach, you can play in the Taj Mahal and still be bad.
That's it. There's just no way around that. What Chris just said is just the straight up truth. There's no way to spin that yarn any other way. Oh, well, let me ask you this. From a stuff standpoint, did James Franklin have an advantage over Derek Mason?
No, James had it worse than Derek in every way. I mean, at least they got that indoor practice facility.
Then what are we even talking about right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the case, then we're not really talking about anything. And we can get these things, and it'll certainly help. But I think it's all about going down to the root. And I agree. Now, look, the stuff helps coach's job be easier to do, clearly. I mean, it'd be a lot harder for Nick Saban to have the success at La Tech that he's had in Tuscaloosa. From a stuff standpoint, everybody understands that. But the root of it, at the very bottom, if we dig deep enough, we're going to find that it does, in fact, 100% agree with you, come down to the coaching staff. So we can give Derek Mason, and which would, at the end of the day, it's a money expedition because we are on the hook because of that ridiculous extension. But at the end of the day, even if he gets those facilities, that's going to take a couple of years for that to be in place and really have a profound effect on recruiting and interest in this program. And now we're looking in year 8 or 9 now and wondering if we're ever going to have a winning season.
VU Titan says, what one word would you use to describe Derek Mason's offensive scheme? He says, mine is ancient.
Listless, not listless, uninspiring. I got some others. Let me think about it here for just a second. Some other things to describe it. Unimaginative, predictable. Things like just the things that I think everybody that were asked that question would say the same. I just could never have envisioned 16 and 80. I mean, look, Chris, it's clear they're miserable. It's clear they're miserable. They're miserable. They had such high hopes for coming back, putting up numbers, enhancing their draft stock, and I don't know that it could have gone any worse. I think the equivalent of what has happened to those two is the equivalent of an ACL tear in fall practice.
I don't know exactly what happened, but I think that offense was lost before they took the first snap.
What could possibly have happened that that it is all gone before they take the first half? Is it because they know they don't have a quarterback?
I think that's part of it. I think they have had chemistry issues since the Georgia game, if not before. Do you remember me saying, and you could go back and find it, the podcast we did after the Georgia game, that something just bothers me with the way they looked, and I can't put my finger on it, but Lipscomb had a weird look about him to him in that game, and I don't remember what else I said, but something did not look right from that point on, and I started hearing grumblings not long after.
I mean, what do you think? They're missing Andy Ludwig? I mean, what are we talking about?
Honest to God, I don't know. There are trust issues there with the players and the coaches, and I don't know exactly what the root is. But I've been told that's the case, and I was told that was the case many, many weeks ago. I think even before UNLV.
Those players?
Yeah.
Now, is that those players or the players?
It was general. I mean, but it's obvious those are two.
Yeah, for them, clearly. They're literally playing out the string, and I feel bad for both of them. But my question is does that look, because you kind of get mixed signals in regards to how the players feel about Derek Mason. You look at those two, you look at the way this played out. Then you go back and think about the Missouri game afterwards and how the players, now it's easy to be caught up and swept up in the emotion of a great feeling of a big win and all that, but you could see how they were kind of endeared to him. Some of those players after the game, again, I fully admit that that's after a win, but they didn't seem like a group that didn't like their coach, that were completely disengaged with them. But maybe that was the moment. I'm trying to get a pulse on the entire team, not just 80 and 16. I'm talking about the team as a whole. What's their psychology right now? How are they feeling? What's their emotions as a team? Not just the record. I get all that. Do they like this coaching staff? Do they respect them? As not as men, I think they clearly do that, but do they respect them as football coaches and their ability to adjust at halftime and make, on-field and in-game decisions? How do they feel about that as a staff? I mean, as a team.
Well, let me be clear, too. I don't know where the fault lies. I just know it is. I guess you could say, look, you're the coach, you're in charge. Ultimately, everything falls under your watch. But I've always said the same thing, like even when it's not looked good before, he always seemed to have the team. Except in 2014, we had kids quitting early, and they were used to seeing James's way of organizing and motivating, and then you come in and it could not have been more opposite. I mean, they just were so lost that first year. But even then, you got the sense that there are a lot of kids that genuinely liked him. I mean, I never heard that there was a spirit of dislike at all. But, man, there's something going on this year that's bad, and it transcends my ability to explain all of it.
Yeah, and I think it goes beyond just simply losing football games.
Yeah. Now, that said, you get out there on the football field for 3 hours and something goes your way early, and you start to think, well, hey, I'm here to play ball. I got 3 hours in front of me. Might as well give it my best. I mean, crazy stuff happens in football. I never would have thought in a million years they'd have won the Missouri game, and they got 3 games in front of them. I don't think they're going to beat Tennessee, but I mean, ETSU, they better win that. And if they don't win ETSU, I think it is over, barring whatever excuse.
But you say that, but wait a minute. So literally, the future of Derek Mason as the coach of this team hinges on whether or not they beat ETSU.
I mean,
it might. Hasn't been enough.
It might. I mean, now I think if they lose ETSU, unless they come back and beat UT next week, I think it's probably over regardless, because at some point this sinks to low and ridiculous levels that you just can't recover from almost no matter what the cost. But I've said this all year. I think they're looking for him to give them something. You beat UK, you beat UT, that might be enough.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I'm not going to sit here and hide and pretend like I don't want sweeping changes, but the one thing I'm not going to do is root for Tennessee or Kentucky to beat my program. I can't be that guy. I probably should, but I can't. I just can't do that, Chris. I mean, I know that you're supposed to be a big picture thinker, and I understand all that, but I can't get to that point, Chris. or at least I'm not there now.
WKU Door says if money prevents Vanderbilt from firing Mason and instead he is forced to change both coordinators again, who should he target that he can realistically get? I imagine the candidate pool will be very shallow, and he would have to take a chance on a young guy who may or may not be ready, or grab an older guy that just wants to get back into coaching. I
Yeah, I
think in
don't
the
know.
question he has nailed it.
I think he has too. I don't know, Chris. How often does it really fix the situation? I mean, you can upgrade. There's no question about that. But I mean, I would have to believe that the coordinators are the issue. And I think they're partial the issue, but rotating coordinators in and out. I mean, you want to talk about an issue? Look at Tennessee and the revolving door of offensive and defensive coordinators that they've had over the years, not just to mention the head coaches, but changing up schemes, changing up cadences, changing up just everything by having coordinator changes every year or two. It doesn't work. It just does not work. Unless you make the super hire, give him the keys to the car, then you start thinking about if you're a head coach who knows he's potentially on his last leg, am I really going to try to hire my replacement in here? I don't know that that's an easy fix. We can start throwing names out there, but I don't know how much that helps. And the reason I say that is something that you have said to me on many, many occasions, and that was that it looks like, just from things that we see, that these coordinators at times are calling what Mason wants them to call. So you can change the name if you want to, and that's fine. But, I mean, I think that's probably I think that he has a certain philosophy about both sides of the football and what he wants his team to look like, and that's what and I think that's what he's going to do with his coordinators, regardless of who they are.
Well, and let's look at the last two coordinators he's hired. One of them was Jason Tarver. The joke was that they were basically brothers separated at birth in the way that they think and go about things. And the other one was Jerry Godowski, who's been on their staff to begin with. I mean, bottom line, for whatever reason, and I do think he looked around, but he had two preseason All-Americans and a preseason first-team All-SEC receiver, and he couldn't get anybody from the outside. He either couldn't or wouldn't. And I mean, I think the past is the best predictor of the future. So there's that. The other thing I want to say is I think if there's ever a year in the SEC that shows that good coaching can really transcend a lot of issues, I think it's this one. You look at Kentucky. Kentucky's winning some games playing a wide receiver at quarterback. South Carolina is playing, second, even at times a third-string quarterback. Went down and beat Georgia in Athens. Tennessee has played three quarterbacks. Had issues with all of them, by the way. Tennessee is winning games. There are ways to beat teams, and I know several other teams in the league are on second quarterbacks. Florida put 56 on Vanderbilt with its second-string quarterback. They can make excuses all they want, and I'm not saying there's not some validity to them, but why is it that everybody else is finding a way around these things?
That's not lost on Vanderbilt fans, and they're asking the exact same question. What else you got?
Let's get a couple more and run through these quickly. Let's see. I've only got time for a couple more, and I'm trying to pick the ones I want. What kind of coach, this from Knoxville Door 94, would you like to see Vanderbilt go after if Mason is let go? Would you rather have a head coach from a G5 or a coordinator from an established Power 5?
Honestly, I'd rather go the Power 5 established route. And I do tend to side a little bit more the way a lot of people do these days, the younger, more offensive-minded type of coaches. I think that that's our best opportunity to attract the type of players here. And I think that's what wins, at the end of the day. And, a name, look, I can't imagine we could ever get him here. But like a guy like Coach Satterfield at Louisville, a guy like, here's a perfect example of a guy that I think most people really, really, really wanted for this program a few years ago, back when he was available. And look what he's done now. And to your point just a minute ago, and I don't even have to say, you already know who I'm talking about. Look what PJ Fleck's done with Minnesota. Okay? Yeah. It's Minnesota, Chris. It's Minnesota. They got a couple of schools in the state that like Crete Durham and stuff like that are really good. But I mean, if you're in the middle of the Big Ten trying to contend with those guys pulling prospects out of Minnesota, and why? Because of PJ Fleck. Guys like that. It's those type of coaches that you're talking about. Those are the guys that I would like to have. The question is, and I want to say yes, but for guys like that, why in the world would you take this job? You need so many assurances. Not only would you need the money, but you would need utter tangible insurance, in your hand that said this is what's going to happen. We're making brand new ground. The administration is behind us. We're going all out. We're going to be Nashville's team. Let's launch it. We need you to be the pilot. Here we go. I would have to have those insurances before I consider taking a job like this.
Well, when they had the vacancy in 2014, they were coming off back-to-back top 25s finishes. So they came down to Chad Morris and Derek Mason and Pep Hamilton. So at that time, they felt like they, I guess, couldn't even attract a Power 5 coach somewhere else that would excite people.
But those candidates, remember that those candidates also were dealing with Mr. Williams and that board, and I bet you anybody that they talked to got a sense of that. That word that spread out, and if Malcolm will come in here and say, y'all, I'm telling you, this is a different day, and let me show you what I'm talking about. This is why it's different. Here's why you can win. Here's why you can make a whole boatload of money. Here's why this is not a place for you to go and kill your coaching career. You've seen James Franklin do it here. What he was able to spin that into. Now, just imagine what happens when you actually have the backing of this university and this athletic department, which is something that I can't imagine that they were putting that foot forward when they were courting the likes of Pat Hamilton, Chad Morris, and Derek Mason.
I don't think bringing him back for a dead-end year would be the right decision, but that right there shows you why they would. Because if they couldn't sell it after James Franklin had just done everything you just said and made himself a hot commodity, it probably becomes a lot harder. I mean, it does become easier when you say, hey, here's the 9-figure commitment we just made to athletics. Now, again, I think maybe you can relay some of that privately before it goes public. I think when there's a will, there's a way. And I think that's what they've got to figure out to do. How do you get from the gap of where you're about to go, if that's really and truly where you're going to go, to where you are now and communicate that to a candidate? Because obviously it was an issue last time. They had a guy hot off 2 top 25 seasons, and they were fishing in the coordinator / group of 5 pool.
Well, the only thing that I will tell you is what I always try to tell somebody when they come to my radio station and I'm helping them produce a commercial, okay? And let's say that they have never been at that point where they're writing commercials or they're trying to voice it or sell it. They're trying to sell their product and their company. You know what I always tell them, Chris? I always tell them, it is impossible for me to sell you better than you. Nobody can sell you the way that you can. So you have to do that. I mean, we can talk about all these outside people and coaches coming in and all this other stuff, but this must be done internally. And if they truly have the right guy, and the message is true, and this is truly what we want to do, then it can be done. It absolutely can, and I believe that. There's too many positives for this school. There's a whole bunch of negatives about this program that go back decades and decades. But you know what the good news is? 18 and 19-year-olds, they don't know that. They know what they see in front of them, or in the very, very recent past. They don't know anything about, losing, not having a bowl game from 82 to 2008. They don't know anything about that. They literally have to do their history. What they want to know is what they see in front of them. And if you can change that right now, make that commitment today from ground zero, it may take a little bit, but yeah, we absolutely can do those things. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think a prestigious university, and look, if we're walking around thinking that our stuff don't stink compared to Northwestern, we're crazy. They're the same type of school we are. Look at the commitment that they just made.
Are they sending a message that says we no longer take academics seriously? Of course not. It's a world-renowned university. And building top-flight facilities for their athletic department is not going to change that. And that attitude needs to be spilled over into the Vanderbilt, community, period, not just from the athletic department, but all the way down the line. See, I don't believe this is an unwinnable place. I don't believe this is an impossible job by any stretch of the imagination. I think the people who truly can make the difference, because the truth of the matter is, Chris, I can talk about it on your podcast. I can talk about it on my show. The fans can bitch, and they can do all this other stuff. They are not going to be the ones that do this. They can help. It's cool. But there's a group of decision makers that have to make that decision. And if they do, we got a shot here. If they don't, you're going to have a whole lot more podcasts just like this. And Chris will tell you, and you hear me saying it all the time, I hate the podcast we're doing right now. I can't stand it. I'm miserable doing this podcast. This is not what I want. This is not what anybody wants to hear, but it is a reality, and there is nothing else. It's what we have to do. Because we don't have another reality. Can that reality be changed? Yes. We're not the people to do it. I'm just hoping that, because it looks like a lot of times the pressure that we try to put on those people doesn't work. It has to come from them, Chris. And you have said some things that lead us to believe that there are some things that are changing for a very positive turn. And I hope it's a massive turn. I hope it's a tsunami-like turn. But I'll need to see it first. I don't believe it until I see it. I'm too jaded at this point.
Well, I will just end the podcast with this, and then I've got to run. I still really do believe what I've said. And I think a year or two from now, maybe even 2-3 months from now, we're having a very different podcast in a lot of ways. I sure hope, for the sake of that fan base, a lot of these questions are answered the way that I think they're going to be. I don't know all the specifics, but again, the numbers and some things that I've had a glimpse at are very encouraging. That said, they have got a tax to pay on past futility that continues to bite them. It is biting them right now. I know that they are focused on the long term, but I think the short term is very, very important. I hope they do not underestimate that. And I think they've got to find a way to bridge the gap from where they are now and where they are in the coming weeks to where they're headed. And when you have a disaster, when your house gets burned down or whatever, it's not like that's the most important thing in your life, but that's the urgent thing in your life. And you got to take care of it. You got to get the walls up again and get everything functioning. And I think that's what their decision makers and board of trust are going to have to figure out. If this continues to go the way that it has gone this year, is, okay, we know that we got some long-term things that are better over here, that we want to wait a year to promise the next guy, but we've got to be realistic and know that the flames aren't going out until we address the other part. And how do we bridge the here to there? And I don't know if I said it very articulately, but I think that's going to be the next problem that they're going to have to start working overtime on.
My God, son, you did well. You did well. I'm very proud of you.
Tell people where they can find your show, where they can follow you on Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at Cheap Seats Bass. That's at Cheap Seats Bass. 101.5 FM in Jackson, Tennessee is my home station. You can find me online at WNWS.com. Chris Lee, you shucked it on down to the cob, big baby. Good job.
Thank you, my friend. He is Seabass of WNWS of Jackson, Tennessee. I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening. We should be dropping one more of these with Willie Donick later in the week. Willie had to cancel his usual Wednesday appearance, but we were going to do one, and we should have that to you. Hope everybody has a great night, and we will see you again very soon.